Okay. So welcome to Assent, Dissent, everybody. I am one of the hosts, Brandon Diaz.
And I'm Sean Strong.
Okay, and you know what we do here. We do politics, current events, and pop culture. So we will go ahead and dive right into the first topic.
Okay, so for our next topic, I want to talk about what's currently going on with the United States postal system and what seems to be apparent voter suppression. So far, we've got a new postmaster general who happens to be a Trump donor. He's enacted some guidelines last month that critics will say lead to delays in the mail delivery system. And some experts have suggested the move could be interpreted as an effort to undermine the viability of mail-in ballots. So what we know so far from a memo that was obtained by the Washington Post is that he's cutting overtime and extension of routes by letter carriers. They're leaving mail on the floor, which is causing delays. They're taking about 16 machines out of circulation that can sort up to, I believe the article said, 3.1 pieces of mail an hour. They're taking those machines off the floor, out of rotation. We know that there's some things going on with the funding of the USPS, but Congress did, according to New York Magazine, pass the CARES Act, which allowed for $10 million in funding to the USPS. But Steve Mnuchin, our Secretary of the Treasury, and President Trump demanded certain concessions, so they were holding up the money. There's no prioritizing of the mail anymore, which is causing so many delays because mail is being left behind. And there are a lot of states that are trying to grapple with how they're going to work the mail-in ballot system, because if they can't get ballots returned by their deadline, which we know that these new guidelines are going to severely impact that, then those ballots won't be counted. And I want to say over 65,000 ballots in one state during the primary was completely unaccounted for because it didn't meet the state's deadline of being returned. So here to discuss this with us, we have Will Smith and Amma Powell. Amma Powell is actually a letter carrier with the United States Postal System. So Amma, can you tell us first, how long have you been working as a letter carrier?
I have been a letter carrier for roughly 7 years, maybe 6.5, 7 years.
Okay. So the new changes that are taking place with the USPS, someone had said that these were, I think it was Mark Diamondstein, I think I'm saying his last name correct, who is the head of the American Post Workers Union. He's their president. He had said that these kind of delays and slowdowns that are impacting things the USPS have not seen like ever. So
Ever.
How do you personally feel about these new guidelines? Like, is this going to greatly and significantly affect your job?
It has already in some ways. Like you said, we've been having to leave mail on the floor, hours of mail, like half of routes on the floor. There's really no organization to it. There's really no rhyme or reason to it. They don't have a system for what mail goes and what mail doesn't go. And I think we'll feel this further down the line in opposed to right now. And like you said, the Postmaster General is cutting overtime, so we're seeing that happen right now. We're seeing a lack in upward mobility. We're seeing a lack in discipline and accountability being held, because it used to be all the mail must go. And with that not being the case anymore, to me at least, it feels like a free-for-all. People don't take mail simply because they don't want to. And I mean, and it's frustrating for me as someone who's on the overtime list, because overtime is optional, who is working. And they not only are trying, none of it makes sense. Cut overtime, but they pushed our start time back from, the post office used to start at some places 6:30 in the morning, some places 7. We started at 8 a.m. We start at 9 o'clock in the morning now. So if you're working a 12-hour shift, you're working from 9 to 9. Wow. Which is affecting how people are spending time with their families. their activities after work, and I do a lot of stuff after work. I'm a busy bee. So that's what we're seeing right now. I think in the future, it's going to show more.
Is that even safe, by the way? Like, I mean, some neighborhoods all across America, no matter where you are just tough and difficult neighborhoods.
Let me tell you, your girl, she is not carrying in the dark.
Okay.
Okay. You hear me? I don't care what neighborhood I'm in. You're not going to see this girl carrying in the night, in the dusk. When it's dusk, I'm like, oh, it's time to go back.
So then how does that work? If you decide you're going to stop, which I'm assuming letter carriers have this option that it's getting dark, we don't feel safe, we don't feel comfortable to carry at this point, then all that mail just gets left behind?
It used to not to. They used to send people to help you. But now it's not even a matter of when it gets dark. It's a matter of, okay, we only want you to work 8 hours. You have to bring it back or leave it here. Don't even take it out with you. Whatever you think is going to put you over 8 hours, leave it in the office in that.
Okay. I heard, according to The Guardian, an article that was published, it was saying that some residents in Philadelphia reported that they were going longer than 3 weeks without receiving mail.
Mm-hmm.
Does that seem fair?
It's not fair, and it's, you know.
Well, I mean, so when I say fair, I'm saying, does it seem like that's correct? Is that how long?
I don't remember where I read this, but I saw that the United States Postal Service is the most trusted government entity in the United States, meaning that of all governmental, like, my brain, I'm sorry, I'm having a brain fart.
Bureaucracies.
Yes. The Postal Service is the one that people trust the most.
Yes.
With that being said, and hearing that people are, and to be quite frank, it's a customer service based organization. And hearing that customers are not getting their mail for 3 weeks at a time is very frustrating, and it's not fair to the customer, and it makes me think, like, outside of just some of the other ways like the post office could save money. Like, this is why it hurts us, because what I really think is happening, I think that not just when it comes to the ballots and voter suppression, I also think, I mean, it's no secret that Donald Trump hates the post office. He thinks that, I think, because he hates Amazon so much,
Mm-hmm.
what we do for Amazon, because the reality is we not charged Amazon what we probably could have charged Amazon to ship their packages. I really think that they're trying to undermine the Postal Service to push it into, and then with having a new PMG that is a Trump supporter, allows the Trump administration to undermine the Postal Service and force it to privatization, which is what I mean by the long-term effects of what's happening now.
I've definitely been hearing on both sides of the aisle, that's where they're going to go. Brandon, do you want to jump in and say something?
Yes, I actually wanted to ask, Will, being someone who utilizes the post office services, so like we know what this whole game is about. It's about voter suppression. But I also want to ask you, have you personally experienced any delays or effects in service? And would you assent or dissent to my assessment of their, Donald Trump is not only aiming at the U.S., the Post Service for voter suppression, but also because we know that the USPS is a predominantly or has a significant amount of minority, especially African-American employees. So what are your thoughts on those two?
I do assent to what you said about the USPS employing, minorities. And I do assent and agree to the fact that this is another form of voter suppression, because Congresswoman Joyce Beatty said, if we can trust for stimulus checks to be mailed, licenses, passports. Why can't we trust the USPS to mail in, for the mailing of the ballots? My thing is, when a person knows that they probably have a chance of losing, they're going to try to rig things as much as they possibly can. And for them to have a new PMG who is a Trump supporter, an ardent Trump supporter at that, Trump is going to place, if you notice, he places people in positions of power that will lick his boots and, say things like, what's the matter, boss? We sick? That's the kind of person he's like. This is why you didn't see or don't even see much backlash from him on Kanye, because we know that Kanye is doing his best to make sure that Trump gets reelected. So for me personally, even with the mail system, my thing is my wife get this like email report, and things are, there's a photograph sent of the stuff that you get in your mail. Sometimes the stuff that we get in a photograph that's sent to our email that we're supposed to get, we don't get. Mm-hmm. And we'll get those maybe a couple of days later. So mm-hmm. when you're expecting one thing, then you're not getting what was shown to you via the email. So then that becomes a bit frustrating. And then here, we're seeing mail carriers carrying mail up to about 7:30, 8 o'clock in the evening. Mm-hmm. But they're flying through the neighborhoods they just throwing mail, like trying to get it out as quick as they possibly can. And that's very frustrating, because if you're waiting for things in the mail, and if they don't come and you're expecting them, and most people probably don't understand why these things are happening, it gets very frustrating. So,
okay, let me ask you this. So mm-hmm. because of COVID-19, people are nervous about going to the polls to vote in person. Amma and Will, are you guys going to vote in person, or have you considered voting by mail? Amma?
I've already, I ordered my ballot because I'm absentee voting, but I never got it. I don't plan on going to the voting. I don't plan on going to vote at the poll, but I'll take my ballot down to the Board of Elections myself if I have to.
Okay. Well, what about you?
And that is my strategy, because I know if the lines will be ridiculously long. This past election that we just had for our primaries here, we waited in line for about an hour and a half. Mm-hmm. And even with social distancing, you still don't feel comfortable. We have on our mask and everything, but I will take my ballot where it needs to be and drop it off. I have no problem doing that.
And I wanted to touch on something also that you said, Will, in reference to the photographs that you get of the mail that you're supposed to get that day. It's called informed delivery. That's what it's called. Mm-hmm. And I've had customers on my route and touching again on this idea of safety. And people think a lot about the dogs and in car crashes or whatever the case may be, but really no one ever thinks about our customers making us feel unsafe as well. I've been berated for people expecting checks, people expecting certain letters, gift cards that they are waiting for. I'm not to say that my job is not important, but I'm just a carrier. I don't that's it. But we get angry customers out there. And then again, working until 7:30. Again, I told you, I don't work as soon as it hit dusk because of I've been followed. I've been followed. I've been 3 times. I've been attacked by dogs. I've been attacked by a crackhead.
Wow.
These these are things. And so now, and then of course you already had unpleasant customers before who wait for you and wait for their mail, and when mail delivery was normal. Now when people waiting for things and we're talking food stamp cards, we're talking Medicaid cards, we're talking the one
prescription,
thing,
Social Security checks.
I will say that's the one
refund
thing.
Checks.
We cannot deliver the mail, but all the packages must be delivered. But they don't get delivered all the time. And I don't like, that's my thing, is like people's pills. It's a lot of elderly people. I have 2 elderly homes on my route. And if I'm not there, or if the person that covers my day off is not there, it's a chance that these pills won't get delivered.
Yeah.
People could be waiting for test results, something very serious. So I think like that's what frustrates me the most. And then in the system, like, and I know in Toledo right now, we're working hard to clean up what we call clean up the mail. But it just made me think, like, even in terms of safety, thinking about the informed delivery or working that late, and you just never know, like, because one of the guys that followed me for 3 hours. There was another carrier who got followed home and pistol whipped.
Whoa.
This was a couple of years ago, but yeah, he was pistol whipped.
But the idea remains that
Yeah.
nobody's thinking of the safety of letter
Of the
carriers
carrier.
at this
Yeah.
point. That's not even a thing.
Yeah.
So we're going to have a discussion on the Black Lives Matter movement. As you know, that was recently a movement that was has been ongoing for some time, but was really brought to the forefront when George Floyd and Breonna Taylor unfortunately lost their lives, as well as many other people. So joining us for this discussion is going to be Ms. Ruth Leonard, who I am especially excited to be joining us today. She is an activist and a social justice advocate here in Toledo. And hello, Ruth, how are you?
I am doing well. How are you?
You're doing very good. And of course, you know, Sean is here for the discussion as well.
Hi,
So,
Sean.
Hey, Ruth, good to see you.
Good to
I have
see you
so
too.
much I want to ask you.
Oh my gosh, I'm excited to answer.
well, Ruth, what would you say is the current state of the Black Lives Matter protests now that we don't have as much media coverage and, you know, so much attention from the media on it?
So we're kind of cycling back to where we were probably earlier this year, where a lot of the work that we've been doing has been behind the scenes. We're looking now at policies that have been put in place that have been the status quo for years, and how to dismantle those policies. We are actively working to defund the police and refund the citizens in order to make sure that there is an equal payment for all of the resources that are needed for communities to be successful. We've seen in my lifetime, and even in the past 7 years that I've been in Toledo, an increase in the amount of police that are throughout the city. And that, of course, turns into a decrease in the amount of resources that go towards other things, like the Youth Commission, which I've seen go from having a phenomenal leader to no actual structure at all. There are no full-time paid employees for the Youth Commission. Neighborhoods and development have constantly seen their budgets slashed. I believe now they get 3 cents for every tax dollar, as opposed to 33 cents of every tax dollar that goes to the police department. And basically trying to figure out a way to reallocate all of the funds that come into the city, so that it's not only the police that receive the benefit of tax dollars. Because just because you have more police in a community doesn't make it any safer. It's actually the communities that have the most resources that are the safest. Because if the status were consistent, then it would be the communities with the most police that are the safest, when we already know that's not the case. So right now we're looking at what do these communities need in order to be successful, and now we're looking into the legislative part of making those changes in the name of not necessarily just the Black Lives Matter movement, but the just creating better opportunities for citizens. And we're starting with Black individuals, because those are the ones that we are most directly related to. So we're kind of starting inwards and moving out to make sure that we have what we need in order to be successful, and to make it easier for that next group of people to come in and get what they need.
Absolutely.
Shout out to the City of Toledo Youth Commission. You know, that's where I started as an intern in my wonderful career with the city. And yeah, we were underfunded then, and I don't think they're funded at all now.
Yeah, no, they're not. I think they had, I want to say, a part-time employee maybe 2 years ago.
They
and
did.
Then they completely got rid of it. And then also, when you look at and I know I'm going to butcher it, but I think it's the
CDBG.
Yes, so the CDBG fund. I know the mayor, after he had his initial meeting with a few different leaders and activists, told it that, we have all of this money for the city now, and we're going to make sure that we fund our city. When those jobs were cut that were funded by the CDBG fund, I want to say when the mayor first came into office. And so now he's using this Black Lives Matter movement as a way to say, now we have all of this money to donate back to our communities, when those are people who needed those jobs back then, that were attempting to make a difference, that those jobs were taken away. And it's a sleight of hand, I think, on the part of the mayor to use the fact that fund came back into the city's pockets as a way of saying, now we're gonna make sure that Black Lives Matter and Black folks all over the place have what they need, when it was taken away from us without our say in the first place. So yeah, I've got a few issues with that. When the police budget can just be slashed in half, and that's $44 million that can go into our communities off jump.
Now, there's much concern with the hijacking of the protests and demonstrations of the Black Lives Matter movement by other people, inciting violence and all of that. Do you think that is going to have a negative impact on the upcoming elections and necessarily the movement itself, the image of the movement? Some would say that it could be a negative impact. Some would say that it could be a positive impact, but there's always seeming to be that air that we have to answer for everybody else's hijacking of the movement, and we have to answer for while other people don't answer for their own actions. Right. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that it's always been the case that whenever a Black person does anything, all other Black people have to answer for it. All other Black people have to take some sort of responsibility for the actions of a few. And I believe that this was the first time that I saw in my own interaction with protests where there was a faction of people who were simply there to cause chaos. And I don't want there to be any confusion, because I believe in an individual's right to protest. I believe in an individual's right to riot. There are certain steps, I believe, that take place that leads up to a riot. When the intentions are pure, when you've tried all the other ways to get your voice heard, of course you're going to snap. And of course you're going to feel like the only way that you can be heard is if you disrupt someone's normalcy. Now, there was a faction of people who were involved in this protest, and I have no problem saying it, it was those young white men. And they felt as though this was their opportunity to really stick it to the man and say everything that they've always been able to say, but now they feel like they're under a banner of Black Lives Matter, and now they can kind of put on the cloak of I'm being an ally, and so now I can cause all of this chaos, when that was not the initial intention of what the protests were. The protests were to uplift the names of Breonna Taylor, of Ahmaud Arbery, of George Floyd, of Tony McDade. These are all of the men and women who were gunned down, and their lives and their families' lives were completely destroyed. If you are coming from a place of frustration of a system that has constantly held you back and told you no and kept you down and has been systemic in their attempt to dehumanize you, then of course, yes, go out and let your voice be heard. And however that occurs, that just has to be the consequence of it. But when you're coming at it in a way of, oh, this is my opportunity to act like I acted 7 months ago when my football team won, or when my baseball team lost, or when I was just excited to be out with my friends and I knew that my behavior was going to be viewed in a different way and that I was going to get a slap on the wrist if that, and I'm just going to keep amping it up and keep amping it up. then no, you have no business being there. And this was the first time that I saw people calling out individuals who were there simply to cause chaos. And I think there is a very easy way to get those two confused and to see someone's intentions being pure as opposed to someone's intentions being chaotic. And the people who are there, if your intentions are pure, then you are able to identify someone who is there purely to cause chaos. So I think now we've gotten to a point where we can kind of peel back that curtain of just seeing the riots as just destruction and seeing the intention behind it, seeing the hurt behind it, as opposed to just saying, oh yeah, I got a chance to throw a rock at somebody, or I got a chance to spray paint something. Like, no, you're not doing it in the name of anyone who has suffered under this systemic oppression. You're doing it for purely selfish reasons. So this was the first time I saw that call out from members who were within the movement to say, you're not here for us. You're not here for what this movement is about. You're here for selfish reasons. And I think I'm really mostly, or I'm most proud of people who were able to identify that and stand up to that.
I have a quick question I want to interject. I'm glad, Brendan, that you brought up hijacking the movement, because I kind of want to talk about that in a different way.
Okay.
I've heard a lot of people say that this movement is being kind of hijacked from all sides. And one of the ways that I heard that I found interesting, and I kind of thought about, I'm a little on the fence both ways, is we hear a lot of people also attaching themselves to this movement now that are standing up for trans lives, queer lives, things of that nature as well. And I heard someone say, you know, not that those things are important, but right now we're just trying to communicate to people that Black Lives Matter, period, regardless of where you fit on that spectrum. Can we get there first to, you know, say, for people to say Black Lives Matter, and then can we start branching off to all the various, you know, areas that touches? How do you feel about that? Because like you said, it did start to uplift the names of, you know, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, Botham Jean, all those people that we lost needlessly and senselessly to police brutality. So what is your answer for that? Do you think maybe having all of those different narratives in the Black Lives Matter movement is distracting, that we just need to stick with all of us matter regardless of where we fit on the spectrum and then branch off? Or, I mean, how do you feel about that?
So I think that there's this beauty in Blackness that I personally had to kind of involve in my conversations with people, because at one point there was an expectation that whatever the heads of the Black Lives Matter movement said, that's exactly what I stood for, as opposed to saying Black Lives Matter means that melanated people need to be protected, and that comes in all different areas. So if you happen to be a Black woman, you have needs that need to be met. If you happen to be a Black man, you have needs that need to be met. If you happen to be a Black trans woman, you have needs that need to be met. And there's not enough, I don't want to call it time to dissect all of these different ways that you can be Black, because there is no one way to be Black. I can only represent what I know. And what I can do, though, is use my platform to give space for others to represent what they know. And in that collective Blackness, I think that's how you have all of these different perspectives that come together that make up the Black community. And so to say that the LGBTQ movement is hijacking or anything like that, that's unfair, because the someone's Blackness doesn't depend on where they fall on a sexual spectrum. I think the need to protect someone, because whether or not you speak with anyone, and when you initially see them, before they open their mouth, before you have a chance to decide what you think they are, you see first their color. And I think that that's kind of the crux of this entire movement of acknowledging my humanity first, acknowledging the fact that just because I have more melanin than you doesn't make me any less of a person. And the way that I've always been able to articulate it is I am, I guess, what you would consider a cis, hetero, straight Black woman, right? And I've always seen my Blackness as first, though, because my parents are both Black. And therefore, before anything else was created, before I knew if I was going to be, or if my parents knew if I was going to be a boy or a girl, before I could figure out what my sexual identity was, I was Black first. And no matter what, I always see, and maybe this makes me jaded or whatever you will, but I always see a camaraderie in Blackness first. And what makes you special is everything that comes after that. Like everything kind of is a smorgasbord. And it's when you build that community for everyone to bring their full selves to the table, and everyone has a chance to let their own identities be known and to develop their own personalities, and everyone has a chance to be heard. That's what makes this movement so special. So the idea that something can be hijacked because someone is identifying themselves doesn't make sense to me. And I'm not comfortable with giving people space to say that how someone identifies is hijacking a movement. I think that's what makes this movement so beautiful. The fact that we can stand up for the trans community. We can stand up for the gay community. We can stand up for the lesbian. We can stand up for the entire community as a whole, because we are all kind of under this, like I said, this umbrella that makes us a part of this really cool club of Blackness. So
I wonder real quickly, just to follow up with that, because I think another thing that I saw, and even one thing that I noticed the few times that I had to take part in Toledo's Pride Parade with different elected officials, is in this thread that I was reading, I found it interesting that they were talking about white homosexuals and how they will come and be a part of Black Lives Matter protests and stand for, trans Black lives or things like that. But you don't see us necessarily invited to their pride movements to also announce that Black Lives Matter. There's not that mixture there or that equality there. So what would you say to a person who feels on that level that they are kind of, hijacking our movement with that, but we're not necessarily, and I don't want to say we're not allowed, but you just don't often see, because for instance, I think DC, correct me if I'm wrong, has like maybe one of the largest pride events. But even if you look, their pride events are basically segregated. I mean, they have pride for white people, they have pride for Black people, and then they have pride for Asians and Pacific Islanders, and then they have pride for Latinos, and you don't really see them come together. But it seems like Black Lives Matter is the one movement where everybody comes together. And it seems like instead of just focusing on Black lives, everybody's kind of trying to throw their own little issues on there. I think someone had even said in a thread that I was reading that defund the police is also being thrown into Black Lives Matter, when really the focus should be just getting people to say that these lives matter and they should not be dying the way they're dying. And, that's a problem.
So I do not want to speak on the LGBTQ community and pride as an event, as a celebration, as anything like that, because I do not consider myself to be in the LGBTQ. I'm more of an ally. And so I don't want to make my word be the word for the Black Lives Matter LGBTQ movement. But what I can say is I have always invited people from all walks of life to be allies and accomplices with this work that we're doing. And I think that if I can get you to be an ally, and then later on I can get you to be an accomplice, then in your complicity with me in my fight, you are going to make sure that I'm invited into the room where these meetings are happening. And so until that happens, then we're not on the same wavelength. You can shout the slogans all you want. If you're not doing the work though, what are you doing this for? And so that's why I'm also very I won't call it critical, but I keep like one eye on all people who consider themselves allies, because I want to know, what are you doing when I'm not in the room? And I think the same thing can be said when it comes to, like you say, these pride events that are happening that are effectively segregated. How are you claiming that Black Lives Matter as more than a statement if I'm not invited to be a part of your celebration, but you still want to include my language in your events? So it's one thing to say it, it's another thing to show it. And I think until you have that showing of complicity in actually understanding what this motto or mantra or movement is, then I'm going to hold you at arm's length. And I'm not going to be able to invite you into the real movement work, because it's so much more than just throwing a protest. And I think that's where I think the same thing can be said for Pride. There's so much more than just having a parade or having your protests. I think considering the first Pride was a riot, Marsha P. Johnson, living her own best life, was putting her life on the line of standing up for herself. And then to see, and I'm so sorry, I'm blanking on the other trans woman who was effectively shunned from the LGBTQ movement, but she did the work in order to make sure that the trans community was able to have safety and shelter. Like, you can talk about it all you want, but talk is cheap. And until you do something to show that you are willing to put some skin in the game, then it's all talk. And for this movement work, there's no time for just talk. Like, and I can't tell you how many times I've driven down the road and I've seen people with their Black Lives Matter signs in their yard, but they're not going to say something when their coworker is talking about N-words in the break room. But I thought Black Lives Matter. It's all show. Like, put some skin in the game and then we can talk. And I think that goes across all of the different factions. If you're not willing to do the work, then quit bluffing. Like, it's as simple as that.
Well, Ruth, we gotta wrap it up because we were running over on the time. But no, you. I'm glad Sean brought up that great question. Ruth, let me tell you, as somebody from the LGBT community myself, you handled that very professionally, very nicely, in a totally different way than I would have responded.
Well, because I wanted to ask you next, Brandon. I wanted to switch roles real quick and ask you next, because you are a part of the community, and I feel like your voice on that issue matters, and I actually respect you as an authority of what's going on in that community, because I mean, this is something that you live every day. Like, I remember listening to your commencement address for the minority Black graduation, and you said, I have 3 strikes against me. I'm Black, I'm gay, and I'm a man. And that really speaks volumes, because I don't think enough people take that into account. And I think it would be very disingenuous for me to be your co-host and to be your friend and to say, I don't think Brandon's life matters. No, Brandon's life matters because he's a Black man. But is there a space to say that there should be equality for the LGBTQ community? And is it fair to say that that space at this specific time may not necessarily be the Black Lives Matter protest? And I think that's where people.
Wait, now, I want to hear your answer.
Yeah, no, that it's very loaded. It's very loaded. Well, first off, to start off, the LGBT community as a whole has always been very fractionated and segregated amongst the races. I mean, in every city you pretty much will go to, I won't say all, I'll say pretty much, the majority of them, you will always see what's known as Pride which is widely known, which is typically in the gay community known as the Pride for white people. But there's also a lesser known Black gay pride. If you go to Cleveland, you go to Detroit, you come to Toledo, you go to DC, Miami, there's always a
Toledo has
separate,
a Black pride?
yeah, Toledo has had a Black gay pride
Yeah,
every year.
I helped host it, I want to say 2 or 3 years ago.
You guys are learning me something tonight.
Yeah, it was actually done at George's, and oh my gosh, I'm blanking on the guy's name. Oh my gosh,
Sean. Did Sean do it, or it was probably somebody else?
No, oh gosh, I can't think of his name.
Not Sean, Chris. I keep getting Chris and Sean
put
mixed
the whole
up.
thing together, and Sheena and Quinn. I think Quinlan was involved in it. And yeah, we basically, it was because you had traditional Toledo Pride, which was very white and very inclusive of all LGBTQIA for white people, and then it was just like, oh well, there's a sprinkle of Black people, and Chris was like, no honey, let me tell you,
right,
Black and brown pride is a thing, and we are going to set it off, and it was fabulous.
Well, and for clarity, there's another person in Toledo who Chris looks like, who is also named Sean, and I was like, I always get the two of them mixed up, so I wanted to clear that up. That's why I kept saying Sean. I always get the two of them mixed up.
Okay,
I call Chris Sean all the time, and whatever.
Oh,
but so they're always segregated. The prides are. There's still a lot of discrimination, if not blatant racism, in the gay community. A couple years ago, I had read an article about a club in New York that had a gay club in New York that had a sign on the door saying that no Blacks were allowed to come in. And this was in 2018 or 17, 18, whenever I read it. In Cleveland, there's a known gay club in Cleveland that it has no problems letting you know that they don't want Black people in their bar. And, you know, so the LGBT in and of itself has its own issues that it needs to clean up. Right. Hell, recently, this past Pride Month, June 2020, I was on a rally going off on Facebook, letting everybody know I'm not going to celebrate any type of pride in being gay because I'm not proud of this community that is so already segregated as a whole and discriminated against, but then has the nerve to be discriminatory within itself.
Right.
And so there's that aspect. The other aspect of it is the fact that being Black and being gay, you already feel shunned for being gay because, you know, the other white gays and the other races that are gay don't particularly care for us unless it's a commodity fetishism type of deal. And then the Black people, also the Black gays, also feel like we are outcasted or shunned in the Black community because of church and homophobia. And so we kind of feel like we get it from both sides, from with other Black people. So there's a common debate with people that I'll see where it's, am I Black first or am I gay first? So I will assent with you, Ruth, on the aspect of our commonality is that we're all Black. And truth be told, that being Black is going to unite us and make us stand forward more than me being gay, because there's white gays, there's Hispanic gays, there's Asian gays, but I'm Black, you know, they can't be Black. They can be gay, but they can't be Black. So that's a whole different struggle of itself. But I will say that I do understand the pain that some of the other Black gays feel where they say that, no, I don't represent being Black first because I'm gay first, because the Black community doesn't want the gay people either. So, you know, I think about it, for example, D-Ray, who started the Black Lives Movement a long time ago. When they found out that he was gay, it was all of a sudden, well, we can't follow him. He's a gay guy. And that was coming from a lot of Black heterosexual men. So it's kind of difficult to try to bring the two together.
That whole thing as well.
Yeah, I think I saw a meme and it made me think of Brandon so bad, because it was basically a tweet that somebody had posted on their Insta story and was like, if we can ever get over the homophobia, we will understand that Black men and Black gay men have more similarities than they do differences. And I was like, ooh, I really want to talk about this, because one thing that I learned specifically from my gay friends is that one, being in their space, does not make me less masculine or more gay.
Right.
Secondly, one thing that I really, really learned, and I think a lot of heterosexual Black men need to learn. And if they won't learn, a lot of gay men will definitely snap and put them in their place and let them know is, ain't nobody thinking about you.
At all.
Don't nobody want you. Like you think that automatically coming into this space of queer Black men that everybody's just about to like sink their teeth into you and try to get you and try to turn you. And it's like, no, they're not even thinking about you. Like, not at all. Their mind isn't even focused on you. And I think those are two of the biggest struggles that hetero Black men need to kind of like tear down in their mind, along with other traits of toxic masculinity. But that is a whole other show.
One thing I want the Black community to grasp a hold of and never let go is, white people might not care for being gay. They might not like being gay. But whenever somebody is gay, they still white, and they're going to bring them white on in, and is white, whatever.
Right.
Black people find anything to be divisive with amongst each other. Ooh, so-and-so got on Adidas. I don't like them. Ooh, they got on Tim's. Oh, he gay. Oh, she too light-skinned. She act white. She too dark. Black people have every mechanism to be divisive amongst each other. And once we can really take that one core thing and get rid of it, that's when you'll see Black people, I feel, come together in a way that, but once they get it, they better hold on to it and never let it go again.
So it's funny.
Well, everybody, that's all the time that we have today on this show. But please don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. We are at Assent_Dissent. Join the conversation, be a part of the topics. And hey, you can always catch bonus footage on either one of those mediums. Again, I'm Sean Strong with
Brennan Diaz. That was new. Anyways, y'all have a good night. See you next week.